Well, we're here with Sheriff Ricky Headley, with Sheriff from 2002
2002, yeah.
to 2008. And so we're going to ask you a few questions. And first of all, thank you for taking your time out and coming and talking to us today about your time as sheriff.
You bet.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this. Thank the class for doing this.
Yes, sir. So our first question is, so what inspired you to enter law enforcement and then run for sheriff?
As far back as I can remember, as a young child, every time I saw a police car, I knew that's what I was going to do. One day I knew that's what I was going to do.
Okay.
And started my law enforcement career in Alabama, and came here in '88. And Fleming Williams was the sheriff that hired me.
Okay.
And he asked me what my goals was, and I told him to take his job one day. I just always felt like that I had a lot to offer. And at the time I ran, I just saw a lot of things that I felt like needed to be changed, things going a bad direction in law enforcement, and that's what really inspired me to run the year that I did run.
Okay. So you started out in Alabama.
Alabama.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would you have done anything differently during your tenure as sheriff, thinking back on it?
Probably not. Some things that I would have probably put in place earlier. I put in, I started sending correctional officers to the academy.
Okay.
And getting them certified deputy sheriffs so that they would make the same salary that a patrol deputy made. And then when we had an opening on patrol, we'd move them out of the jail, and it cut down turnover in the jail. I probably started that earlier. Okay. And tried to get as many as I could through the academy and get them certified working in the jail.
Okay. So what's the most challenging and the most rewarding parts of being the sheriff of Williamson County?
Let's do the rewarding part first.
Okay.
The most rewarding part of being the sheriff is just for me. I love people, and I love serving public. I love serving the public, and so the rewarding part for me was knowing that I was providing a service to individuals. And was there that we were there if they needed us, just serving the public. I mean, that was extremely rewarding to me. The most challenging part,
yes,
serving the public.
Yes.
So it cuts both ways. That's the most rewarding and the most challenging.
I think out of the sheriffs that we've interviewed thus far, I think they all said the same answer.
Is that right?
I think y'all three said the same answer. So. What was one of your biggest accomplishments as your sheriff that you think was?
I thought about that. We accomplished, I think, an awful lot in the time that I was sheriff. But two things I'm the most proud of is the drug enforcement team that we put into place. I brought the first dogs. On the force at the sheriff's office.
First canine unit.
First canine unit. I was the one to put the first dogs on the force. Swore them in, bulletproof vests, put badges on them. The whole thing. So that and Project Lifesaver.
Yes.
I brought that to Tennessee. We were the first sheriff's office, and Project Lifesaver was something very, very important to me because it was for families that had. Family members that were dealing with a dementia patient that may wander off, or children that were handicapped.
Yes.
And that's what inspired the program. I'd read about it, and we had a child that wandered out of the house and got lost in the woods, and that's when I brought the program in. And we would have these patients these families would wear a transmitter bracelet.
Okay.
And we had the receiver at the sheriff's office, and if they wandered off into the woods, we could go straight to them. So Project Lifesaver probably I'm more proud of than anything.
Yeah, and I think we still have both of those programs. I think we're up to, we started with 2 dogs. I think we're up to about, and I'm just taking a wild guess, maybe about 14 to 15 dogs now. We just got approved for 4 dogs strictly just for the school resource officer program.
That's awesome.
And so
that's interesting.
We have a lot of dogs, and we're still doing the Project lifesaver
Right.
as
Talked
well.
to Sheriff Hughes about that not long ago, and I ran in. This is just a little side note. I ran into the first child that ever wandered off that had some serious mental handicaps,
Yes.
and wandered off into the woods. Was about 7 years old. I ran into him and his father recently,
Okay.
and he's about 30 years old. And he's the one that inspired that Project Lifesaver program, and I just talked to him not long ago.
Oh, wow. So that said, so share an unusual event or a call that sticks out to you as sheriff.
Oh my goodness, so many. I can't really think of anything. This is prior to me being the sheriff.
Yeah. Okay.
Just in a patrol car patrolling one night, and went around behind a business, and there was a guy up on the roof of the building about to break in, going through the roof, and jumped off and landed on the hood of my patrol car. And there was an arrest made, of course.
Yes.
But that was, I don't know who it startled the most, me or him, because I was just patrolling around the back of the buildings, as we do at night, looking for break-ins. And he was actually climbing up an electrical pole to get to the roof. And when my car came around, he let go and landed on the hood of the car.
I guess they were saying he fell right into your lap, right?
He fell right into my lap. Yeah, and I was at the right place. That's correct.
Oh, so how has law enforcement evolved or changed throughout the years?
Technology. Technology is the main thing, but professionalism. When I started law enforcement academy, the police academy was 6 weeks.
Okay.
I'm not sure what it's up to now.
12 weeks, I believe.
12, and then of course when I started law enforcement, you did 6 weeks of the academy, and then that was it. You didn't have any in-service training. So the training, professionalism, technology has really come a long way through the years.
All right. So how do you view the present standards of the use of force, high-speed chases, crowd control, et cetera? What do you think about them?
Well, I'm still old school when it comes to that kind of stuff, and
Okay.
I think we've gone too. I think there needs to be regulations for certain, and we have to look out for the safety of the private citizens as it relates to car chases and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But I think we've gone to the extreme the other direction, and I think cameras being a good thing can also be a terrible thing, because sometimes they show just a portion of what really happened, and so I think we've gone too far the other direction with our use of force, with our car chase policies, crowd control policies. My opinion is that you take charge of a situation like that and you get it under control before it gets out of hand. And I think law enforcement's been strapped to the point now they're not able to do that a lot of times.
We're dealing with a lot of more de-escalation. Just our presence alone, is kind of a show of force to some people who have, I guess, bad experience with law enforcement. So,
Right.
So we're training now to kind of go in a little more, be more sensitive, I guess you could say.
And Williams County's always been good at that, because Williams County's always had a good reputation of having respect. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. So a lot has changed with Williamson County over the years. Is there something that has changed the most that you can think of since you were sheriff? Like anything changed?
Population.
Growth.
Traffic.
Okay, yeah.
It was, when I went to work with the sheriff's office in the 80s, there was 58,000 people living in Williamson County. Now there's that many living in a neighborhood.
Yes, 58,000.
So the population.
Wow, 58.
Question going for is, you have to run for office. It's a constitutional office.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's an advantage or a disadvantage? Would you rather not? Or?
I think it needs to be just like it is. I think the sheriff. I am so sorry. I got a new phone here, and I don't know how to turn it. I don't know how to quieten it. I think the people should elect the sheriff. I think it would be a terrible mistake for the sheriff to be appointed.
Why is that?
Well, because the sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer of the county, number one. And with that being said, the sheriff has to have the leadway to make decisions on how law enforcement should be conducted in the county. And if they're appointed, a lot of people think that I've worked for a police department as well as a sheriff's department. A lot of people think sheriff's department is very political because the sheriff is elected. A sheriff's department is the least political law enforcement agency there is out there. And it's because the sheriff does not answer to a board of directors, or, they do as it relates to their budget. But if you have an appointed sheriff, it becomes way too political at that point for the sheriff to be able to do the job.
Thank you, Sheriff. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Sergeant.
And thank you for your service to the community of Williamson County. And as a resident of Williamson County, I appreciate you being the sheriff when I was there and still there. I'm just working on about to complete my 26 years.
That's amazing.
And thank you a lot.
Thank you, sir.
brother.
Thank you, Sergeant.
All right. So we have former Sheriff Jeff Long with us. So you were sheriff when? What year were you elected?
2008 to 2019.
2008, 2019. Good. Well, as you know, we're doing this for our class project, and just got a few questions we want to ask you. So
Okay.
the first question is, would you have done anything differently during your tenure as sheriff?
Ooh. I don't know that we would have done things differently. It was a different time in 2008 than it is today.
Okay.
So naturally learned a lot of things in modern law enforcement that we probably didn't have the capability of in 2008 to 2019. We had a great group of employees and family atmosphere at the sheriff's office. We tried to modernize during that time. The only thing I would have done a little bit different is probably fought a little harder with the commission to try to get more than we were first of all blessed by what we got.
Yes.
The commission and the mayor were very good to us during that time. We got a raise for the officers each year and everything, but I probably would have pushed a little bit harder to get a little bit more. I know we talked about trying to get them into a certain retirement system that would have helped the deputies. There wasn't the revenue at that time to do it, and I probably would have pushed a little bit harder for that.
Well, thank you. So what inspired you to enter law enforcement and then run for sheriff?
You're talking about a long, long time ago. When I turned 20-year-old, I guess it was 19 or 20-year-old, in my home community, I was in a rescue squad, small community, got to riding with the deputies at night, sort of helped them out on transporting cars and things like that, and decided that that's what I was going to do. I went to college to be a Methodist preacher.
Really?
And much to her surprise, I ended up in law enforcement. But when I did that, I just got hooked on it and started as a reserve deputy in my community when I was 21 years old. And then after that, I was going to college for criminal justice, political science. And so I knew what I wanted to do. And then after that, it took off, and I'm now in my 53rd year of law enforcement.
Well, wow. Well, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
So what was the most challenging and the most rewarding part of being sheriff?
Probably the most challenging at that time was that was just when Williamson County was really to begin the big build, as I call it. When I moved here in '74, there were 36,000 people in the whole county. Wow. And now we're at 360,000, I guess, by now. And during that time of the big increase, the number of people moving in, the schools had to increase drastically.
Yes.
And at that time, 70-something% of the county budget was going to schools every year. So the challenge is fighting for what we needed for the sheriff's office compared to what was left, because the schools got all of it, because they were having to do it in order for population growth. And trying to get that revenue to operate was probably the hardest thing we had to do at that time.
I think they're still getting a big portion of it too.
I'm sure they do. Yeah, I'm sure education is the biggest.
So that was the most challenging part. So what was the most rewarding part of it?
Well, most rewarding was certainly serving the community that I love.
Okay.
Been here since 1974. Love Williamson County. It's home. All of my family, my children are raised here. It was finally, when I had the opportunity to run under unique circumstances that I ran as sheriff, it was a great opportunity for me to finally be able to give back to a community that had been so good to me and my family.
That's good. Yeah. All right. So as your tenure sheriff, what do you think was one of your biggest accomplishments while you were there?
Probably the biggest accomplishments that I think we tried to do was modernize the force and modernize law enforcement in Williamson County. We were able to get the aviation unit through donations of free. It didn't cost the community anything to get helicopters for recovery of missing children, elderly people that wander off, prevents police officers and deputies from being in pursuits, dangerous pursuits, because the helicopters can maintain that view.
Yes.
We modernized and started accreditation for the department through the state accreditation program, and got accredited during that to professionalize the opportunity. And I think the one thing that sticks out is every time that I can remember when our deputies would go to a statewide function with every other sheriff's office, I know the people that organized those meetings and everything would always make a comment. They were able to pick out a Williamson County deputy simply off their appearance in the uniform by the professionalism they exhibited, and we had a great team. We had a great team of deputies. You were there at that time.
Yes, sir.
You remember how well it was, and I think that's one of the proudest things I have is that accomplishment, and we were able to get the multi-purpose building, that all the equipment we got free from the military during the 2010 flood. I remember we were out in the grassland community trying to rescue people. We didn't have anything to literally haul people out of the flood waters, and we're talking about flood waters that were probably 5 and 6 foot deep.
Yes, sir.
We didn't have any way of rescuing them get out, and I made the mayor a promise, Mayor Anderson, a promise at that time that we would be able to handle the next one. We had a lady who was stuck in a tree during that flood out in Leaper's Fork. We couldn't rescue her out of the tree and had to tie off the trees with rope to wade out and get her to rescue her, and that came the aviation part of it.
Okay.
Charlie Mann, community leader out there, wanted to rent a helicopter that day to rescue the lady who was on his property, and weather prevented it. But anyway, we decided at that time that we get aviation assets for rescue and all that. So all of that professionalism and remodelization and trying to get into the next generation of law enforcement, we did it. We started all of the new devices on speed control, ammunition review before we issued it out, qualifications for people with handguns and weapons to be qualified, and that's probably the proudest part.
I think part of that also we spread out the Swift Water Rescue Team.
The Swift Water Rescue was out of the flood. Didn't have one at that time, and we were able to get, I don't know how many they have now, but we had, I think, 2 or 3 rafts at that time, and had a whole team dedicated that trained and was certified to be Swift Water Rescue.
All right. Well, so another question is, you might want to share an unusual call or event that happened while you were sheriff. I think you kind of touched a little bit.
I probably
with the
talked about
flood.
that. The most challenging was the 2010
Yeah,
flood.
okay,
I
all
mean,
right.
that was a once-in-a-lifetime thing.
Yeah.
One of the funniest that I had is that we had a barricaded suspect on Del Rio Pike, I believe it was, one night, and we had been up all night long. The SWAT team had been out there all night. I had been up all night long, and as sheriff, you're not supposed to make any of the decisions, too many on that. You have a commander that does that, and I got tired and got sleepy, and I finally told one of the deputies, this individual had a weapon in his hand, and he would stick his arm out the door with the weapon and threaten everybody, and then he'd go back into the room. And one of the deputies was a pretty good sized individual, and I told him next time he stuck his hand out, grab him by the arm and jerk him through that door. And so, being a good deputy following orders, he did that. And we didn't know that the individual had a dresser backed up against the door, and it crushed the door when he pulled him through it. And I ended up having to pay for the door. But Mark Elrod was the captain over the SWAT team and reminded me after that I wasn't to make any more decisions on SWAT calls. So that was one of the funniest we had. But anyway, it was safe, got him out, and nobody was injured.
Okay, good. So, how has law enforcement changed or evolved throughout the years that you can think of?
I mean, it's totally changed. I started in law enforcement in 1971, and here we are in 2026.
Okay.
Every dynamic of law enforcement has changed. Communications, we had a radio in the car that literally had tubes in it instead of computer chips, and you had to wait for the tube to heat up before you could transmit over the radio. That's how old it was back that time. Blue lights, you didn't have on top of the car blue lights. You had them that sit on the dash like a teardrop bubble.
Okay.
Weapons were single revolver-style weapons. You didn't have any semi-automatic pistols to carry more capacity for protection of the equipment. You didn't have protective vest. You didn't have any of the modern equipment back then, so it's changed totally. And then with that, the good thing is the professionalism of the law enforcement community has greatly impacted the performance of the officers and provided for their safety, their security, the safety and security of the citizens they serve, and makes it a better opportunity for them to serve their communities and to keep the whole community safe.
Thank you. Next question is, so the influence that present standards of use of force, high-speed chases, and crowd control, how do you view that now about the use of force, high-speed chases, and crowd control?
Well, it's a huge balance because you've got to make sure that, first of all, your community is safe and that your deputies and police officers are safe. But you've got to be in the interest of the community to make sure there's not any abuses of that. Use of force is something that every agency faces every day. I know where I am now as Commissioner of the Department of Safety and Homeland Security, we do regular reviews of body camera. If we get a complaint of somebody on unlawful use of force, first thing we do is review the body camera. And that usually will tell the truth as to which side the story really on. The standards now are a lot higher for all of that, and that's a good thing because it keeps us all in check and it makes us better servants for our community by meeting those standards that we need to be meeting in the use of force and all the other standards that we have now.
All right. And the last question here is, so a lot has changed in Williamson County, and over the years, what is something that has changed the most since you were the sheriff?
Well, the most would have to be the population.
The population.
As I said, it was 36,000 when I moved here in '74, and now we're at, whatever, 360. Last figure I heard, 360,000. I mean, that's a tremendous growth.
A lot of people.
Even though it's several years, but that's consistently been that growth. And with that, you have more requests. When I worked for the sheriff's office in 1976 with Sheriff Fleming Williams, we had 3 deputies on at a time. And now I'm sure you have probably 15 on a shift at a time for 3 shifts a day. So the demand is that much greater. We had cars that you would have to trade out at the end of a shift because somebody else is going to drive that car. Now you each have your own automobiles and things. So the ability to provide more services, more equipment, better service for the citizens, that's one of the biggest things that's changed. And the demand by the community for better protection has been a huge difference since the early days and now. And that's a good thing too, because it keeps us all in check of what it's all about.
Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for your service. You said 54 years?
53.
53 years. And what's your current role now?
Commissioner of the Department of Safety and Homeland Security for the state of Tennessee.
And that was an appointment job by the Governor Lee?
That was the only reason I left as sheriff, is he asked me to go serve with him as commissioner and miss it every day and miss the employees and missing being in the community every day. That's the biggest part. I miss the community and being involved in Williamson County.
All right. Well, thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Former Sheriff.
I'll always take sheriff.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Darrell.
Thank you for coming in. Everyday Sheriff, ex-sheriff.
Retired sheriff.
Retired sheriff. First question on the agenda is, what inspired you to enter law enforcement and then run for sheriff?
Well, being as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to be in law enforcement. I mean, it goes back to when I was 12 or 13 years old and watching Dragnet and One Adam 12 and stuff on TV and everything. And then I'd originally planned to go to Memphis to work because I grew up in West Tennessee.
Okay.
And things didn't work out in Memphis. Came to MTSU, met my wife, got my degree in criminal justice, and then started with the sheriff's office on June 1st of '79. And I really had no intentions of, the thought of being sheriff or chief of police had never entered my mind. I just wanted to get out here and work. And then as the years progressed, you know, when Sheriff Haley got in trouble that time, I stepped in as the interim sheriff and kind of got a taste of what being the head what's in charge is like.
Yeah.
And of course, my wife and I just had our son, and I knew that being the sheriff took all your time, so I said I didn't want it. And then when Jeff Long took the commissioner's job, my son was growing up and said, I ain't got nothing else to do, let's give it a shot and see what happens. And the rest is history.
Yeah. All right. All right. So what would you have done differently during your tenure as sheriff?
You know, I was looking at all those questions, and I don't know that there's much that I would have done different. You know, I tried to get out and see all the troops at least once a month on each shift in the jail and each shift on the road. Maybe have spent more time down at the courthouse with Freddie's group and stuff. And then, you know, I wish I could have done more maybe for salaries and stuff. Yeah. But, you know, you can only ask for so much, and the county's going to only give you so much. So, and that was a constant battle and always will be.
Yeah.
Never make enough to being able to afford to live here in Williamson County.
That's right.
It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. What would be the most challenging and the most rewarding part of being sheriff?
Well, the most challenging, and I think any sheriff will tell you this, is trying to make everybody happy. Because it just damn well ain't going to happen. You got your employees, then you got the citizenry out there, and everybody's always wanting something. Yeah. So trying to make everybody happy is one thing, but that would have been the most challenging. And I think some of the most rewarding would be, you know, there's a couple times that I was able to talk to people, keep them from committing suicide. As far as the department goes, when I was the interim sheriff the first time, I had gone to I think it was Tullahoma, and we'd gone to a 1-week jailer school down there, and I'd never been to a jailer school because I'd never worked in the jail. Okay. And I'll be quite frank with you, I may be giving you more information than you want to know, but And until I became chief deputy under Rick Headley, the less I knew about the jail, the happier I was. And then when he promoted me or appointed me as chief deputy, I said, well, I better back up and punt here. I got to figure out about the jail. So anyhow, so I went to an in-service training down there in Tullahoma, I think it was, with a group of guys. And I understand the state put it on. Mm-hmm. And they've got to be generic because you got 95 counties, and all 95 counties have got their way of doing things. But when I came back, I got to talking to some guys. I said, we can do better than that. And that's when I got the idea. I said, we'll have our own detention training. And that's when we started our detention training academy, which I think is still going on today.
It is.
It's been revamped and everything a little bit, but it's still going on. And then when I became the elected sheriff, I started and got our law enforcement function certified through the Tennessee Chiefs of Police Association, accredited through them.
Okay.
And then right before I retired, we had started, and you have to forgive me on this, I can't remember it was Tier 1 or Tier 2 certification in the jail that they had started on.
I think it's Tier 1.
It may have been Tier 1 that I know that.
Because they're working on, I think they're going to get swapped over to Tier 2 here pretty soon.
So we had started that before I retired. So that was probably some of the things that I enjoy the most, that I think I helped to make the sheriff's office a little bit better.
Okay. So what year were you the interim sheriff again?
Well, the first time, I won't say it was 2008.
2008, okay.
And it was only for 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit longer.
And then you were elected sheriff.
Then I became interim sheriff again in 2019 for a couple of months there. And then I had to run to finish out Jeff's term.
Okay.
Because he still had 2 years left on his term. And then in 2022, I ran again.
Okay.
And then I stayed there till I retired.
To 2024.
Yeah. No, I retired, December of 2023, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because 24, yeah, 24.
Okay. All right. What was your biggest accomplishment while being sheriff?
Well, as I mentioned, maybe I misunderstood your question, but as I mentioned, doing the getting the jail certified.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
and getting accreditation for the law enforcement function.
All right. I may have doubled back on that question. I'm not keeping up here. So share an unusual event or call while you were sheriff.
Oh gosh. Well, as I was sheriff, I think the most unusual or one that really played the most on me was the time that Chandler Rowe got shot. We had never, Morris Heathcock was the only sheriff's deputy to be killed in the line of duty. Mm-hmm. And then that night, Chandler was out making that traffic stop, mm-hmm. and he, listening to him on the radio, so he just as calm as he could be. He's shooting at me. I've been shot, but to hear that, but just to get the call.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking the whole way down to Vanderbilt, man, I hope he's going to be okay. And that was probably the most traumatic that I've been on. Now I'm going to back up a little bit. I'm going to tell a war story.
Yeah.
There was one back when Fleming Williams was sheriff, and we got a call of a lady that had not been seen for several days by her neighbor. So we went out there, and long story short, she was divorced, lived by herself, had a couple of dogs. Well, she died in the house.
Okay.
We got in the house, the only thing that was left over was bones and pieces of clothing because the dogs were locked up in the house, and the dogs ate her.
Ooh.
You go into the bathroom to look in the toilet bowl where they were drinking water, and there's blood stains and stuff on it. Oh. So that's probably the most unusual case that I've ever been on.
Yes, wow.
And, so.
That's wow. So just so the people would know, Chandler Rowe got shot, however, it didn't kill him, anything like that?
No, he got him in the shoulder. He got him in the left shoulder.
Yeah.
In enter and exit.
And exit one, all right.
Yeah. 223, I think it was, or 308, I can't remember.
223 round, yes. Yeah. And I think that case is still ongoing because the vehicle is still sitting down the street there from us. Yeah. So how has law enforcement changed or evolved over the years?
When I started, only thing we had in a patrol car was a two-way radio and a switch to turn our bar lights on. Technology. Has changed law enforcement tremendously. I can remember when we used to run registration checks. If it was a Williamson County tag, we would call into dispatch, and they had a book that they got updated, I think, every week or something from the county clerk's office with Williamson County tags. They'd have to thumb through there to look it up. If it was out of county tag, they'd have to call the state to run the tag.
Okay.
And then, of course, when I started, we didn't even have in-house computers.
Yeah.
So, you know, when we moved out here on Century Court, we got computers throughout the agency. But then we went to cameras in the cars, body cams, then the computers in the cars. So it's technology, and it's ever more evolving.
Yeah.
It makes work so much easier for the guys. You know, you could run a wanted check on somebody. Back when I started, and you may not hear about it till 2 days later. So, oh yeah, he was wanted out of so and so. Now you get it just like that.
Yeah,
so the technology is by far, and even the cars today. I mean, you know, just the equipment that goes in there and stuff. It's just amazing.
Yeah. So, how do you view the present standards of the use of force, high-speed chases, and like crowd control?
Well, everything I think works well. I think we do. I think we've always done a good job on all three of those for as long as I can remember. Now, yeah, you're going to get bent out of shape every once in a while when you get in certain situations, but as far as Tennessee goes and law enforcement in general, I think everybody does a good job. You know, there weren't that many. Of course, when I started, I think the two biggest events we ever had as far as crowd control was one time, I think back when Fleming was sheriff, we had the KKK come to town.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they marched, I think there was 13 of them that showed up. And they marched downtown and everything, and there's probably about 13 of us with Franklin and the county that had crowd control, so there wasn't any trouble down there.
Yeah.
And then the year that was Halloween one year when an individual got shot down on Natchez Street. I don't know whether you remember that or not. He went down there to buy dope and he got shot. Mm-hmm. So there was some trouble there, but you know, crowd control, everybody was very peaceful.
Yeah.
And then of course, then in 2020, when we got COVID and all that other crap, you know, we had a few instances down here on the square and people marching and stuff, but everybody did well, and I think all the deputies and all law enforcement, they met everything as it should have been met. You know, they didn't use any excessive force, and I think everybody's done a good job. And I think for the most part, everybody does a good job with it.
Yeah, I think de-escalation training more has helped law enforcement.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And there's certain, you know, I think, you know, we started with, I don't know whether they still have it, but they have the person that used to come out on mental health calls with us before I left.
Yeah.
You know, we got that started, and I think that's helpful because, you know, everybody looks at law enforcement. You're supposed to have the answer to everything. You can't get it in 12 weeks.
No.
You know, it takes a person, 8 years to be a psychiatrist, and they expect a cop to be able to do it in a week? It's not going to happen. So having those people trained like that is quite beneficial.
Yeah. All right. So I think it's our last question here. It says, so a lot has changed in Williamson County over the years. So what is something that's changed the most since you were sheriff?
In the county or at the sheriff's office?
In the county or the sheriff's office? Just
The growth.
the growth? Yeah.
The growth. Like, you know, I tell people that I've met playing pickleball that have moved here from different areas. I remember when Cool Springs was nothing but farmland. West Haven was out there where they did phosphate mining.
Yeah.
And, you know, just the area, I think, you know, College Grove out there where the Grove is, you know, it's just the growth and then the influx of people that have come in here. That's the biggest change, and I don't see it slowing down at all.
Yeah.
You know, I could drive from Nolensville to Fairview in a police car running emergency traffic and get there, you know, from one point to the other probably in 20 minutes. You can't even get out of the city of Franklin in 20 minutes running emergency traffic. So those are the biggest changes. And then, you know, Williamson County government and Franklin City, I can't speak that much to Brentwood or the other cities, but, you know, they're very, I'm not going to say very progressive, but they're mindful of what's taking place and trying their best to, again, try to satisfy everybody, which is not going to happen, but, you know, to satisfy the majority, they're doing a good job of it.
Yeah. And then with all that growth comes a lot of other issues with crime rates and things. So they kind of, but I think the county has had their hand on it and working with the judges. And,
Oh yeah, by far. You know,
DA's office.
with us being in such close proximity to Nashville,
Yeah.
and you know, it always used to be rumored. People would find out they committed a crime in Williamson County. They go, "Oh Lord,
Yeah.
I have messed up," because the judiciary here they didn't slap them on the hand; they slapped them on the fanny
Yes.
and made believers out of them.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, me working in the criminal warrants unit, I would hear people talking about, man, you get in trouble in Williamson County, they'll throw the book at you.
That's it.
For stealing a piece of bubble gum.
That's it. Yeah,
So,
that's it.
So the criminals out there know, don't come to Williamson County because we will prosecute you to the fullest.
Yes, yes.
So-
You know, you get back to it too, thinking about the growth and everything. I can remember, you never would have thought about it. There was a study done when they started to build a new jail, which I understand they're in the process of doing, about how many the current population of the jail. I say current population, the trends in population of the jail, of how many people were in the jail that were Williamson County residents, and how many of them were outside of Williamson County.
Oh, yeah.
And I think maybe like 20% of the history showed that only 20% of the people were from Williamson County. The rest of them were from out of county, and a lot of them have gotten arrested out here at Cool Springs for shoplifting. Of course, you got people driving back and forth, and you're getting your DUIs, and people coming out of the north in certain areas committing burglaries and stuff. And so there's just not that many people in Williamson County spend time in the Williamson County jail. There's a lot of people from outside.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Sheriff Dusty Rhodes. Thank you for your time, your interview, and thank you for all your service.
Well, I appreciate it.
For Williamson County, and as a citizen of the county, we appreciate all your service.
Well, thank you very much.
40 plus, was it 40?
44 and a half years.
44 and a half years.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I thank you, sir.
All right, man.
So we're here with Jeff Hughes, the sheriff of Williamson County, Tennessee.
Yes, sir.
And Sheriff Hughes got elected in 2024.
I took office March the 12th of 2024.
2024. All right. Well, thank you, Sheriff, for being here with us today.
My pleasure.
And as you can see, I'm one of his sheriff's deputies. It's been a pleasure working with him. Oh, first question, Sheriff. So what inspired you to enter law enforcement and then run for sheriff?
Well, I got to take a minute and try to think back that far. Having been in the business now for 40 years, I know I don't, look much older than 30, but long time ago, I just accidentally kind of stumbled into law enforcement. I was working at a warehouse over on Thompson Lane, and I knew that's not what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do. But some buddies of mine were going on vacation, and they said, "Why don't you go with us?" And I said, might as well. So I up and quit my job, went on vacation with these guys, and just so happens before I left town, I put in an application at the Fairview Police Department. This was in 1983.
Okay.
And lo and behold, when I returned from vacation, they hired me, and that began a very long, and I guess what some would say storied career.
Okay.
Over 3 different entities. Started out at Fairview, and I only worked there for about 3 years. In February of 1986, I moved over to the Brentwood Police Department and spent the next 36 years of my career at Brentwood, and rose through the ranks from patrolman all the way to chief of police, and retired in February of 2022, and was really enjoying the retired life for a couple of years there until my predecessor, Sheriff Dusty Rhodes, decided that he was going to step down midterm. And the opportunity arose for me to enter the race to finish his unexpired term, and I started getting a lot of phone calls and a lot of encouragement, and the rest, as they say, is history. Here I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for throwing your name in the hat.
Well, thank you for working with me, Drell.
Yes, sir.
It's people like you that make it worthwhile to come out of retirement, because it's not it's a tough job, and retirement's not that bad after all. You know,
Yeah.
when you get a taste of it, it's pretty good, pretty sweet.
Speaking of tough, so what's the most challenging and most rewarding parts of being sheriff?
Well, I would say the toughest parts are the political aspects of the job. This is the only job in law enforcement that has directly had any ties to politics. Now, there are political implications in law enforcement. You know, you have governing bodies and those sorts of things. But when you're elected by the people and you add that political piece to the job, it really makes it much more challenging because, you know, as the sheriff, you serve everybody. Regardless of your political affiliation or what you believe or what have you. And so sometimes decisions you make or events that you attend, you know, you make one group of people happy and the other people you make upset. And so you've always got this political element that, you know, you're always trying to balance. And I don't look at this job as a popularity contest.
Yeah.
I hate the fact that, you know, you have to be elected to want to serve in this capacity because it does put some pressures on the job that, you know, there shouldn't be any outside political influence on what we're trying to accomplish in law enforcement. We all have the same goal when it comes to protecting and serving, I think.
Okay, good, thank you. So what would be one of your biggest accomplishments while sheriff? I know you've only been sheriff for a year and 8 months, but is there anything that...
So coming up on 2 years, you know, we've done things a little bit differently since I came into office, and one thing that is readily apparent is that, you know, there's two things people don't like. Sometimes the way things are and change. So inevitably with a new sheriff, there's going to be change. And I think everybody comes into the job with an idea of how they want to run the sheriff's office.
Okay.
And in my case, I wanted to put a new structure in place because an organization of 350 allocated positions is a fairly large organization. And it was apparent to me that there wasn't enough span of control to effectively manage that many people. And when everything was coming up through one person to the sheriff, then I felt like that we were, number one, not being accessible enough to the people that work for us. And number two, I think we were losing some accountability throughout the organization on how we could do things more effectively and efficiently. And so I created a structure. Instead of having one chief deputy, I created a structure where we have 4 deputy chiefs. And I started out calling it buckets. And so I put these 4 buckets in place and then tried to move the areas of functional responsibility into these buckets, which ultimately became deputy chiefs. And then created a greater level of accountability across the organization, people that report up through the chain of command and then through our command staff and through the deputy chiefs, then I've got a better understanding of what's going on in the organization. And I think it helps us ultimately serve the citizens that we work for better.
Good.
So I think that in and of itself is one of the things that I'm really proud that we were able to put in place. And as you're familiar, you know, we made a big push to implement a pay raise that took us to the 75th percentile of the market comparison. Now, that left a lot to be desired because the market needs to be specific to the people that you're competing against and not necessarily people across the state of Tennessee that you're not competing against. And so, you know, it was better than not doing anything, and it did take our starting pay up. and we've pushed that across the organization, and I think that's been a good thing too for morale. But those two things, I've really wanted to focus on transparency through communication, and I think we've done that through the weekly report outs that we push out through the organization, and just trying to keep the staff informed of what's going on.
Yeah.
And then building trust through fairness and consistency, putting systems and processes in place that create a better level of trust when you're not just doing it one way this time and another way the next time, trying to be fair and consistent across the or over the long haul.
Yeah, right. Good. Well, I would have to say yes. I'm glad that you was able to get us up to that 75 percentile, and our applications have gone up
Absolutely.
dramatically in the last.
I would agree, and
months.
that's to that point. We could stay on this question for a while, but we were severely understaffed when I took office, and we're as close to full staff now as we've been, I'm told, in a long time.
Yes, sir.
So it would be really nice in our world if we had a waiting list of qualified applicants that were waiting to come to work, instead of us, being short-staffed and always wondering, who's going to cover the shifts and who's going to be out there answering the calls. So that's a good thing, and I think it all goes toward what we're trying to build at the sheriff's office.
All right. Well, my next question is, if you would like to share an unusual event or call while you've been sheriff, or maybe in law enforcement.
Well, while I've been sheriff, probably one of the most interesting calls that I've been on was here recently, when we had a suicidal person on the bridge over at the Natchez Trace Bridge here on 96 Highway, headed out toward Fairview. One of our detectives had actually spotted a gentleman who was on the outside of the fence on this bridge. In other words, on the wrong side of the fence. He had walked out toward the middle of the bridge and was threatening to jump. And we had a lot of resources out there. And I went out to see if I could offer any support to the folks that were there. And ironically, to my astonishment, when I arrived, I was asked if I would speak with this gentleman as the CEO of the Williamson County Sheriff's Office, and of course I said absolutely, I'd be happy to. And this was an 8-hour standoff with this man, trying to communicate, trying to negotiate with him to come through a hole that we had cut through the fence so that we could take him to safety. And I'm not a hostage negotiator. I've never been trained in hostage negotiations, and the last thing I wanted to do was get in the middle of something. But at the same time, I wanted to offer my services in any way I possibly could.
Yes.
And in this particular case, prayed with the gentleman. Actually had a cheeseburger with him while he was on one side of the fence and I was on the other, and thankfully to the trained professionals that were there, the negotiators, they ultimately did talk him into coming on to the right side of the fence, and he was taken into protective custody for his safety. So that was an interesting experience in the short time that I've been sheriff.
So where did cheeseburger come from?
Well, someone went to McDonald's, and I had asked this guy. I said, man, if you'll just come to this side of the fence, let's you and I go get some lunch. I said, how about let's go get a burger?
Okay.
And lo and behold, somebody shows up with a sack of burgers, and I took him over a hamburger, took him over a cheeseburger, and he wanted me to have one with him. So I stood there and had a cheeseburger with this guy while we continued to negotiate. So
we can say the golden arches saved the day.
Apparently so. But in over the course of 40 years, if you can name it, think of it, imagine it, I've had some kind of involvement at some level in pretty much everything, and it's been it's been a nice long ride. I've been very blessed.
So, in over those years, so how has law enforcement changed or evolved
Oh my goodness.
throughout those years?
Well, I tell people when I started on the road in patrol, you know, we drove Dodge Diplomats, Plymouth Grand Furies. They had a bench seat in the front, vinyl. And if you weren't buckled in good and you hung a curve real fast, you would slide from one side all the way to the other. No computers, none of the technology that we have today in these cars. Today they look like a cockpit.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're really crammed in there. And when I would leave to go on patrol, it was a pen and a pad of paper.
Yeah.
You know, that's the way we policed back then. And there were no cell phones. You know, you might have had a handheld radio, a handheld radar, if you were lucky enough to be the one on the shift that got it.
Yeah.
But there were no in-car cameras. There were no body cameras. None of the technology that you see today. That, you know, this has really evolved into a profession.
Yeah.
And it was far from that in 1983. I think we were still trying to get there. And I think that the level of education and the training, the mandates, and the salaries that you see that officers and deputies are making today is evident of how far we've come as a profession.
That's good. All right. So, how do you view the present standards of the use of force, high-speed chases, crowd
Well,
control, etc.?
I was very fortunate to be on a team, a task force, if you will, when I was with the Tennessee Chiefs of Police Association. And there was an esteemed group of gentlemen. Jeff Long, who is the Commissioner of Safety, a former sheriff, was on that team. And David Roush, who is the director of the TBI, and several of us came together to talk about best practices as it relates to use of force, pursuit, and those high-risk things that create the most liability for law enforcement in general. And so we created some model policies, and we worked kind of in concert with the governor's office to come up with these model policies that we pushed out across the state of Tennessee through the Chiefs Association and the Sheriff's Association, so that we all were working off of the same playbook, if you will. We shouldn't be doing it one way in one part of the state and another way in another part of the state. And I think that really brought us all closer to center when it came to drafting a policy that we could all work off of, that made us much more, I think, responsible in how we dealt with use of forces,
Yes.
and de-escalation in particular, and pursuits. Those are two things that have historically been instances that create high liability for law enforcement. And I think we really moved the needle on that. And you can look at the trends over years and look at where, you know, maybe use of forces in pursuits were at one time, and hopefully to where we have come to today, to where when we pursue someone, we've taken everything in consideration. We want to make sure that our policy is sound, which is the thing that we put in place. We want to make sure that our training is in place to train on the policy, and then we got to make sure that our practice
Yes.
meets our policy. And so I think that we made a very concentrated effort a few years back, and I'm proud to have been part of that group that helped formulate those policies.
Thank you. This is the last question for today. It says, so a lot has changed in Williamson County over the years. So what is something that has changed the most since you've been sheriff?
Well, I alluded to it earlier, you know, just the structure itself, but, you know, I think just from my perspective, the county has grown exponentially. And so the population obviously has increased. Crime we're very fortunate and blessed to have a relatively low crime rate in comparison to maybe some of our surrounding counties. You know, we neighbor Nashville just to the north, and you know we've got I think a pretty good handle on that. But it's something that we can't rest on. It's something that we have to continue to be diligent in making sure that we don't become soft on crime. I think that's one thing that we've worked collectively as a criminal justice system in concert with our district attorney and our judges and all of our law enforcement partners here in the county to make sure that we're tough on crime. But having said that, when your population grows, you know, your crime can tend to your crime rates can tend to grow as well, and so we've got to make sure that we maintain pace with the times. In other words, when I came into office, as you recall, I immediately asked for 18 additional people. And it was my understanding that we had not added any new personnel since 2018. Well, obviously the population had risen, and arguably the crime rates had started to trend up, and response times were going up. Well, what didn't change? You know, the staffing, and we've got to stay up with the times, and you know, the citizens of Williamson County expect and deserve to feel safe in the places they live, work, and play. And I think we've got an obligation. I've got an obligation as the sheriff to provide you and every deputy here in the sheriff's office the tools and resources they need, the competitive pay to keep you employed here, to get you trained up and retain you so that we can continue to deliver the best level of service we can to the citizens of Williamson County. And, you know, that's really, if I had to say one thing that kind of summed up why I'm doing what I'm doing now, it's really for that reason. It's to try to leave this place a little better than I found it, and make sure that the technology's in place that we need so that we can work smarter and not harder, and, you know, set a structure in place that will sustain long after I'm gone, and will allow the men and women of the Williamson County Sheriff's Office to continue to be one of the esteemed law enforcement organizations, not only in the state, but in the country.
Well, thank you, Sheriff, for your time.
It's my pleasure. Thank you all for doing this. Thank you for putting something in place that hopefully will capture some of the history of the Williamson County Sheriff's Office. Just a parting thought, my grandfather worked for the Williamson County Sheriff's Office way back when in the day, and I've heard stories of my dad talking about that, and so long ties to Williamson County, and it's a privilege and an honor to serve as the Sheriff of Williamson County.
Likewise.
Thank you, Darrell.
I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.